KFDM reporter Lindsey and photographer Drew Barrio traveled to death row in Livingston 2 weeks ago. She joins us now with her special report. Lindsey?
Bill, Lawrence Russell Brewer was 31 years old when he took part in the murder of James Byrd Jr. Brewer is now 44. His life for the past 13 years spent primarily in a small cell on death row. He answered all of our questions about the crime, about his ties to what investigators call a white supremacy group, his thoughts about execution. We also spoke with former Jasper County Sheriff Billy Rowles to help put some of Brewer's answers in perspective. Answers the former sheriff told us are not supported by the evidence.
No, I don't regret going there.
Huff Creek Road.
I'd go again to Jasper.
On the outskirts of Jasper, Texas. A winding, tree-lined road, peaceful. An image that was shattered by a crime so graphic, it became known across the country and the world.
That's all I could see whenever I looked out the sliding glass window in the truck was Sean bending over at a pair of ankles.
Many call it a modern-day lynching with a chain instead of a rope. The dragging death of James Byrd Jr., June 7th, 1998.
I know in my heart I participated in assaulting him. I had nothing to do with the killing as far as the dragging or driving the truck or anything.
The words of Lawrence Russell Brewer, 13 years later, offering his version of the events. The first time he's given an interview from prison, the Polensky unit in Livingston, death row, surrounded by razor wire, guard towers, Brewer's home beginning in September of 1999.
Literally seen Sean Berry use a knife to cut Bird's throat.
Brewer has stuck to that story since his capital murder conviction.
There was absolutely no throat cut. Wasn't even scratches on the throat where a knife had done it.
Billy Rowles was the Jasper County Sheriff when Byrd was dragged to his death. He investigated every detail of the case, working hand in hand with Guy James Gray, the district attorney at the time.
He has communicated to Guy James and I that Byrd was already dead when they put the chain on him, and that just didn't happen. I mean, there's absolutely no evidence of that at all.
24.5 feet.
What the evidence showed is that Byrd was alive when he was tied to a chain and dragged behind a pickup truck down Huff Creek Road. It was an agonizing death. Byrd struggled to hold himself up by his elbows. The ground chipped away at his bones. His body swung from side to side until it struck a culvert and came apart.
It began here and ended 2.5 miles down this road. It brings back memories for the sheriff, memories he wants to put to rest.
A lot of bad memories out here. I still remember walking from the body was right there in the middle of the road right there. It's sickening.
As far as any regrets, no, I have no regrets. No, I would do it all over again, to tell you the truth.
And what would Brewer say to the Byrd family?
Absolutely nothing. Only one possibly would be I would have liked to have spoke with the mom and the father, tell them face to face exactly what happened, you know, in private instead of in front of through the media or through the courts.
Going through all those trials and still absolutely zero remorse. I mean, that's just so far over my head, I can't comprehend it.
Confederate flag and like a cross burning and the intertwined KKK.
Rowles and others close to the case say to understand more about Brewer, more about what led to the crime, you can look at the tattoos that cover his body. They tell a story of hate.
I wouldn't consider it a white supremacist. I would say more or less a separatist.
Brewer joined the Confederate Knights of America when he was in prison, years before he ended up in Jasper. He says the group molded him, molded his views about blacks and other minorities.
I personally come out of prison after being there for 4 years on Beto 1 and watching the blacks and the Mexicans, other races, literally beat people near death. So I come out after 4 years of that, and you know, with that mentality, you know, like every black and Mexican I seen was like, you know, hatred toward them. So I just wanted to be, you know, around white people.
Beliefs branded on his body, showing his loyalty to the Confederate Knights.
You know, if you're a member, then you got to identify yourself. Everyone would recognize you.
Now, Lawrence Russell Brewer will be forever linked to the murder of James Byrd Jr.
Still pray for the people here in Jasper, because I'm telling you, we still carrying these scars. They're not gone. It's a shame that everybody can't accept life that way. To treat all people with respect and dignity, and that would be my prayer.
A prayer the former sheriff says is unanswered because of the events that took place on this logging road 13 years ago.
Former District Attorney Guy James Gray and former Jasper County Sheriff Billy Rowles visited Brewer in prison a few weeks ago. They wanted to meet with him one last time to make sure, in their words, they got it right. That when Lawrence Russell Brewer is executed, there would be no questions in their minds that he is guilty of capital murder for the dragging death of James Byrd Jr. They spent a couple of hours talking with Brewer and listening, and are convinced they did get it right.
The Beaumont Police Department is made up of veteran officers and young officers who are just beginning their careers. All are dealing with the loss of Brian Hebert in different ways. This isn't the first time many officers have had to deal with the death of a coworker and friend. 6 News reporter Lindsey Ap joins us live with details from police headquarters in downtown Beaumont. Lindsey?
Ashley, I am here outside the Beaumont Police Department in downtown. Now, if you look behind me, you see the police memorial. It stands in front of the station here. There are flowers that are set there in memorial and memory of Officer Brian Hebert. People have been showing up all day to pay their respects. Now, Crystal Holmes is an officer. She's been here for more than 25 years. She says it never gets easier, that it's always painful when you lose someone you consider a brother or a sister.
To lose a brother in the line of duty is really a terrible thing for anyone to have to go through. And not just for the officers that work here, but for their families as well, because when they say good night or good morning to us every day when we walk out of that house, they're not quite sure if we're going to come home. So they're going through a tough time as well.
Officer Crystal Holmes says this is the first time many young officers have dealt with the death of someone they know and are close to, not only in their professional lives, but their personal lives.
They're reaching out to other officers, and sometimes that's all you can do. You don't want your families and your friends outside of law enforcement to know that there may be a weakness there and that there may be a concern, so you're going to see officers turning to other officers.
Holmes says the Beaumont Police Department has lost a significant part of its family.
A lot of people in the public probably thought he was a little bit shy, but around family and friends, he was just very outgoing. He loved his family. He was not married, but he was very close to his parents, his grandparents, his sister. They did a lot of things together. He was very well-rounded, very well-liked, and a lot of fun to be around.
Officers want to grieve, but know they have to move on and continue to make the community a safer place to live.
And you want to experience that grief, but you also know that you have an obligation to the citizens of Beaumont and an obligation to the other officers out on the street to continue doing what you do and to get out there and do the best job that you can.
Officer Hebert's funeral is set for this Wednesday, July 13th at 11 o'clock a.m. at the Beaumont Civic Center. Now, immediately following the procession, immediately following the service, there will be a procession. It'll go down College Street to MLK, and it will end at Oak Bluff Cemetery in Port Neches. Reporting live in Beaumont, Lindsey Ap, KFDM 6 News.
America, and to liberty and justice for all.
A community coming together, just as it did 8 years earlier.
They took us in and became part of the family and worked with us through the months to recover as much as we did of Columbia so that we could find out what happened.
Robert Cabana is the director of the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. He made several trips to Hemp Hill after the Columbia exploded and more than 80,000 pieces of debris rained down on East Texas.
Unbelief that no, they have to come home. But why aren't they here? And then the reality set in that no, something very bad's happened. And then it was dealing with that. It was getting everybody out into the field to start the recovery efforts. And
NASA, the FBI, and many other federal, state, and local agencies poured into the small town of Hemp Hill. Pastor Fred Rainey remembers it well.
The initial response was the boom, and went out and saw the vapor cloud and thought there was some disaster. The community came together and committed together to finish a task and a goal, and that was to make sure that all the astronauts returned home to their families.
2, 3.
Now the NASA family has joined the people of Hemp Hill in cutting the ribbon and dedicating this museum. They vow to make sure the world never forgets the sacrifice of the 7 astronauts who lost their lives.
An amazing tribute to a crew that deserves to be honored, and we're just very pleased to be here today to share.
Evelyn Husband Thompson was married to the shuttle commander.
He would be very humbled by it. It was a tragedy that day, but their story doesn't end there.
This museum will help ensure the story continues to be told. It will educate generations of Americans who weren't alive in 2003 and make them appreciate what science has done for our country.
They did something that they truly believed in. They knew the risk, but it was important. They were explorers, and to me, they're heroes. They had a dream. They pursued their dream in the face of adversity.
A dream, NASA says, demands we learn a lesson.
So that we don't allow something like this to happen again.
This museum, a landmark, housing memories in a small East Texas town forever changed by Columbia and determined to never forget. Reporting in Hemp Hill, Lindsey Ap, KFDM 6 News.